And here is Cade Povich, left-handed pitching prospect in the Baltimore Orioles organization. Cade, you're coming off of an unbelievable start, which we're going to break down. 5 innings, 10 Ks, no runs, but you've been really hitting your stride over the last few starts. And I appreciate you hopping on the day before you're about to follow that start up now on Friday.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on.
So I want to talk about everything with you from, the start to this season as you get your second taste of AA to your journey from the University of Nebraska and kind of getting through everything. But I want to just start with this year and we can kind of work backwards a little bit and then circle back to your most recent start. But, obviously your name has kind of come up more and more and more. I don't know how much you pay attention to that, but when you strike out 10 guys and your stuff ticks up and you start to kind of put it all together, people are going to get excited, especially in an Orioles organization that, I think a lot of people were excited to get you added to the organization as they're looking to just continue to add arms. I know fans are very excited to have an arm as exciting as you. What has this start of the season been like for you? Because you've now had 3 straight outings where you've struck out at least 7. It's 7, 7, and 10. And it seems like things are just really clicking for you from just momentum perspective, just kind of your rhythm on the mound. You look really confident out there. Can you just talk about what you're feeling right now on the mound? Because it looks really good.
Yeah, it's just kind of the pace of everything that I worked on in the off season coming into actual play. I would say kind of all the preparation and everything that was done in the off season and spring training, and getting the experience of being in big league spring training, and carrying that over into this season so far. I feel like is what's really helped out a lot.
Can you hit on some of those things? Because obviously you were showing a lot of those signs last year as you're having a lot of really strong starts, several 10, 11 strikeout outings, but it just seems like the consistency has really been there from the jump this year. What are some of those things in big league spring training or through the offseason that you were focusing on that's, kind of maybe helped you unlock something else here so far this season?
I think just working on the schedule, on the day-to-day schedule, being kind of diligent in my work and what I do. Off season, taking all my pitches, trying to just pound the zone with every single one of them. Not worry too much about missing bats, just trying to throw strikes and fill up the zone, and know that if you throw good stuff, they'll come. Which also helps when you have a defense behind you that can get pretty much any ball. So just pound the zone, having the confidence to go kind of be yourself, and then just working that daily plan that you set for yourself.
What's interesting is you've always kind of been the guy that pounds the zone. I think that's what got you drafted out of Nebraska. That's what's, really was, I think, what the scouting report was on you out of the gate was lefty, pounds the zone, mixes it up. And now you've seen that stuff tick up. So I think it's interesting to hear you say that. Do you feel like you are missing more bats almost without trying now because of this approach and kind of leaning into what's got you here as a guy that's always been able to mix it up, has always been able to pound the zone, and now you've seen this uptick in your stuff across the board?
Yeah, I have a little, just trying to establish fastball, and work stuff off of that, and obviously that makes hitting a little more difficult. Hitting's not easy, so going and knowing that obviously is also a little bit of a confidence boost.
And then stuff wise, obviously the fastball, being able to get more lifts with the fastball is gonna set the tone and make you a lot more confident across the board. But just seeing your pitch usage and also the effectiveness with all of your offerings, you've got the fastball, the slider, the curveball, the changeup, and specifically the changeup. I feel like it's a small sample. It's still early in the year, but it seems like you've been spotting that pitch a lot more and using it a little bit more. Obviously, the fastball, you've been able to get a ton of lifts too. Has there been any specific offering? The sliders, I feel like, has always kind of been there for you that you feel like you have a little bit more confidence in so far this year. And was there any focus for you on any specifics within your arsenal to maximize that going into this year?
The changeup was definitely one thing that we looked at the off season. I feel like last year at the end of the year, I was able to throw a few that were good overall, but the locating it over the middle of the plate, in counts that I'm not supposed to throw a changeup over the middle of the plate was one thing we looked at. So just the consistency as far as how we were wanting it to move, and then where we were locating it, and also just saying kind of screw it, we're just gonna chuck it and let it do what it does. Kind of all that playing into each other has definitely made it um, a better pitch in my opinion than it was last year.
In the slider, I mean that's a pitch that I feel like you can kind of command on both sides of the plate. I'm seeing you backdoor guys that are righties, and use it as a swing and miss pitch again against lefties as well. Would you say that's your most confident pitch in terms of one that you just feel like you can use to get yourself out of really any spot?
Yeah, that I mean, I feel like even more than that would be probably my curveball,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
just because it was one I've been throwing since, gosh, I couldn't even remember, but I threw it throughout college as well when I didn't necessarily have a slider yet. So that's definitely a pitch that I feel comfortable. Probably one of the more confident ones I feel comfortable throwing at any time.
And in your college career too, again, in a world where velocity kind of is king, and that's what teams are always looking at. Like, at what point did you realize, like, hey, I've got the ability, I'm starting to turn enough heads to be a pretty early draft pick and be a guy that could be taken in the top 5 rounds? Like, when did it start to kind of become a reality for you as somebody that could be a legitimate draft prospect?
I think it first really came. I didn't throw necessarily my freshman year that hard in junior college, and then my first year at Nebraska in the fall, I wasn't lighting up the radar gun or anything, even with my first couple starts there. And then during COVID, the facility I trained at, it was still open in a sense, so I could go in there and kind of basically just focus almost an entire season on trying to gain velo, trying to gain weight, trying to, do all this. And then once I got into summer ball, which luckily I was able to play summer ball during COVID, it's kind of when I started to see the velo tick up and start getting into maybe hitting 93 here and there. And, um, seeing some radars, heads turn, going into my junior year at Nebraska in the fall.
And at that point, what kind of difference did it make on a collegiate standpoint? Because you see that velocity tick up. I mean, that's going to make a big difference, swing and miss wise, but you also want to kind of keep being who you were, which was a guy that can mix it up. You talk about the curveball that you've always had. Did you feel like that kind of helped you unlock something, or did you almost have to remind yourself, hey, I don't want to lean on this now 91, 92, 93 mile an hour fastball a little bit too much, because that'll overpower a lot of college hitters?
Yeah, I tried to just staying true to myself, and I mean that's a lot to go with my college coach as well. It's just the velo tick up helps obviously, but at the same time you got to this point with throwing in a certain way, so let's stick to that, and just let that extra tick up in velo help itself out.
So you get drafted 3rd round. You already had thrown a fair amount of innings that year. So you throw a little bit, at the rookie level, low A, look great there in 10 innings. But, that was just kind of just your opportunity to get a taste of it. Then you come back the next year with, kind of ready for a full slate where you end up throwing 114 innings in 2022. And that was, between organizations, which we'll talk a little bit about that transition. But, speaking to the transition of kind of going straight to high A, because you did really only throw 8 innings in low A. Obviously, polished college arm makes sense. You can make that jump, but it's a jump. What was the biggest adjustment for you? Because you were punching guys out, 107 punch outs, and 78 and 2/3 innings in that Cedar Rapids specific stint there. But also, there were the ERA, like, it's surface level, but was a little bit higher than anything you were probably used to doing in college because you carved guys up. So, like, how did you trust that? Because obviously it all started to get better and better and better. You're missing bats, but it might not all totally be there the way you wanted it to be, and now it is. What was the biggest adjustment for you to that high A level? That's a big jump from college all the way to high A, where you got some hitters that have kind of got a decent amount of professional at bats under their belt.
Yeah, there were definitely a lot more advanced hitters, I would say, and then that kind of just brings up what I was saying earlier about what the focus in the offseason and into this year was. It's just consistency. having good games and continuing to put those starts together, and not letting anything kind of spew out or go haywire. Um, and that was probably one of the biggest things I learned. And I think a lot of that comes down to just the the mental aspect of it, and then also managing workload a little bit, so that you feel at your best on when it comes to that start day.
And then you also, I mean, this was your first full pro season really, and you end up getting traded, which is the nature of the beast. It's unfortunately the business side of it, but it's also a really interesting angle because you're a guy that just gets into pro ball, and obviously third round pick. A lot of teams knew who you were, and were probably had you circled on their draft boards. And I assume that the Orioles very well could have easily been one of those teams too. It's got to be a weird feeling, I assume, to get traded, but it also has to be in a weird backwards way. I assume kind of like interesting because it's like, oh, this team, this organization, everyone knows how much they need pitching, and they ID'd me as a guy that can kind of help usher in this new era of more pitching prospects and more pitching in general from top to bottom. What was that like, kind of going through that process of getting traded? Obviously, it's bittersweet, but again, you get acquired by an organization that has some of the most talent in any organization in baseball in terms of what you guys have prospect wise. And obviously, you're now one of the most exciting arms that they have to offer in that system. And you are making a big impact.
Yeah, it's obvious. Like the phone call I received, it was kind of a shock, just because one, you don't necessarily expect it. Two, it was I think it was the last day. So it's kind of like, oh well, nothing's gonna happen. And then you wake up and you're sitting in your bed and it happens. So yeah, it's a crazy process when it originally happens, but kind of looking at it more and seeing all the great stuff that the Orioles have in their farm, number one farm system, all this talent in the field. You got Grayson and DL. It's you kind of look at it again and go, okay, I feel like I'm going to a really good place.
Yeah. And so you talk about spring training and just being able to work with the big league guys, but even from the minor league perspective too, there's so much talent. I always talk about Norfolk. That might be one of the best
Yeah.
AAA rosters I've ever seen. I know a lot of teams do like intra squads and live ABs and things like that. Did you guys do any of that through this spring? Like, did you have to kind of square off against a lot of the Norfolk guys and big league guys and things like that? Because that's kind of the ringer, even for a high level pitching prospect like yourself. Like that Norfolk team, I always think about it every single time. I'm like, this is a great test for this pitching prospect. This is a great test for this pitching prospect every time they square off against Norfolk.
Yeah, I mean, when I first got there, I was just before games had started, I was just getting into throwing live at bats. So, I got to throw to Rutschman and Mateo and Santander and all these guys, and then I got to throw to Ben Boom. Um, and so, yeah, I just being able to mix with all those guys, and then meet some of the guys that are in Norfolk now, and um, just kind of be around all of them and see them compete. And obviously, it's insane that the talent that was there, and it was really cool to see and be a part of.
And then also, your team, you talk about the defense behind you and the way you're able to kind of, be confident enough to pitch to contact, even though you've missed a lot of bats so far this season. Just having that confidence. This team is really good too. And specifically, I mean, like Heston Kjerstad has been unbelievable, to see what he's done in the early part of this year. I mean, Kobe Mayo, another really, really good prospect. But from the defensive perspective, like you talk about that, why are you so confident about the defense behind you? Like, who are some guys that you really just can love to watch go get it, the few times that you do end up giving up maybe a loud hit in the gap or a hard hit ground ball?
Yeah, I mean, the infield throughout has basically been pretty locked down on any balls coming to them, and then obviously it's like almost every other day that you see Dante making a
Yeah.
unbelievable catch in center field. So it's kind of been, just for me and for everybody, even sitting in the dugout, if the ball's hit to center field, Dante's going to be there somewhere. So it's been pretty crazy to watch the past couple of weeks how all that's been.
Yeah, so I broadcasted in the Cape Cod League in 2019 and for Katuitt. So Dante was playing center field out there, and like anytime there was a ball out there, I was getting myself ready to get excited about a diving catch.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of our biggest highlights of the year were Dante Williams catches in center field. So it's always nice when you got a guy that can go get it out there. It's got to be pretty fun to watch. But
Oh, 100%.
and from what you've been able to do now, in this new organization and now kind of making your way up, you've had the success in double now. And obviously we've talked about the talent from top to bottom and the talent at the big league level. This is a kind of a changing Orioles team that is very serious about winning in the near future. What are some of your goals as you continue to go? Because obviously you're off to a great start. Everything that you've worked on to get you here, this second stint in double A, you obviously look like you've kind of leveled yourself up a little bit, but I'm sure you've got goals to reach triple and maybe even beyond that this year. What are your individual focuses as you kind of go in throughout this year after such a hot start?
Yeah, I definitely obviously want to keep moving up. I think that's always the goal for everybody. But it's not my decision at the end of the day. So all I can do is try and um, continuing to get better, like I would in the off season. You try and work on different things to be the best you can going into the season, and just trying to carry that over into season. Continuing to train, work on things. So I'm a better pitcher at the middle of the season, at the end of the season than I am now. And just trying to find that consistent standpoint to where everything's working. And I'm obviously you're not gonna be the best, feel the best every single start, but you can prepare and try and work to be like that as much as possible.
What stood out to me specifically on you in your last start, where you go 5 innings, 10 strikeouts, no runs, is we talk about how good the breaking balls are. The curveball is one that's always been there for you. Now the slider, statistically speaking, is one of your most effective and efficient pitches, in terms of your ability to locate it too. But it was the fastball that really got all the swinging strikes in this outing. But what was interesting to me is you look at the sequencing, you look at the way you attacked hitters, like yeah, you started some guys off with fastballs, but you also started plenty of guys off with sliders and started a couple guys off with changeups and things like that. Um, was that a game where you just felt like the fastball was really working for you, or did you feel like you were setting up the fastball well by starting guys off with sliders and starting guys off with other pitches?
Yeah, I think for the most part is the mindset was already going into that game. Trying to work stuff off the fastball and establish the fastball early. Um, and and really the overall mindset was just trying to throw everything through a brick wall at the end of the day.
And you kind of did that. You hit 95 several times. You're sitting really, 93, 94. And what's interesting too is the way that so there were some pitches that registered as cutters, like you mix that in as well. Is that a slider that's kind of coming in a little bit harder? Is it a fastball that you cut a little bit, or is that an actual different pitch that you're mixing in there as well?
No, it's an actual cutter, and I think um, it might have been there might have been some that that might have moved a little more and read a slider because I only actually threw one slider that game.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so
Okay, so
yeah, so they were
that's
all
why I
cutters.
love asking, because you never know, like with TrackMan or with whatever data you're getting from what exactly those pitches might be. So you had a lot that registered as sliders. So those are specifically actually cutters.
Yeah, I only threw I only threw one actual slider.
Interesting. And so that cutter is the pitch that you feel like you have a lot of confidence with too. Because again, like whatever's registering as a slider, whatever it is, high strike rate and a lot of effectiveness there. Is that a pitch that you've always kind of had going? Obviously, you mentioned the curveball has always been there, but when did you start incorporating that cutter a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean the cutter's kind of been a pitch for me that ever since I was a little kid has been um, here and then there. It started originally. I think I was 10 or 11, and there's not a whole lot pitching development wise at 10 or 11 that
No.
you can really look at. You're throwing fastball and changeup, but you're also a little kid scared to throw inside and hit somebody.
Yeah.
So my dad and I were sitting in our house one day, and we're just thinking about a cutter because we saw something about Mariano Rivera and we found a video on how he throws his. So we just kind of went to, if we were going to throw inside of a kid, we were going to throw a cutter. And then if we were going to throw away, we'd throw a fastball. Obviously, not many 11-year-olds are throwing cutters. So
Yeah.
it was something I was able to
Oh,
kind of build upon and keep throwing. And then kind of once I got more comfortable throwing a fastball inside, the cutter kind of went away. And then came back a little bit in college. And then with the Twins, it went away again. And then after the trade, bringing it back. And it's just been something I've been really confident with as far as how it's been moving and kind of where the velo is. And, it's very similar to a fastball. So the ability to throw it for a strike is pretty easy as well.
yeah. So how different's the grip? Because some guys have the slider that they'll kind of manipulate to just be a shorter slider, and then sometimes that'll register as a cutter. It sounds like this is a fully different pitch, closer to the fastball. How different is the grip from maybe your slider or from your fastball for this cutter?
Yeah, it's really just kind of like a 14 fastball.
Oh, wow.
Um, I mean, the ball's tilted a little bit and finger pressure is a little different, but for the most part, I try to keep it pretty similar to the fastball, so it has a very similar look coming out of the hand, and then moves a little bit more to the right than arm side once it gets to the plate.
And is it something that you specifically, you mostly just want to use to kind of like bore in on righties, or is that a pitch that you'll throw to lefties a little bit as well?
I'll throw it to lefties a little bit as well. It just kind of depends on the count and what we've thrown before.
And you talk about like pitch usage and how with the Twins you weren't using it, with the Orioles you were. Like, obviously you don't need to peel back the curtain too much, but I always find it fascinating. Like, you have different organizational philosophies and different ways that teams feel like they can help get the most out of what you're doing. Was there a big change in terms, or even much change at all in terms of what the Twins maybe saw out of your arsenal, and maybe what the Orioles see now, and what they want you to do in terms of pitch usage and just overall sequencing and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, here it's pretty free. There, if you want to throw a pitch, if we're gonna look at the numbers and see how we can improve on it. Obviously, not try and overdrive with throwing six, seven, eight different pitches, but yeah, I mean, I was able to come over here and um, throw the cutter again. I think the first game I threw in Aberdeen last year, I probably went from throwing zero with the Twins to throwing maybe 20 or so in that first game. So it's definitely been a pitch for me. I feel like um, that it's looked and played really well for me.
And one of the last things I wanted to ask you is there anybody that you look towards at the big league level in terms of just like the way that they attack hitters, or mechanically, or I know a lot of pitchers like to kind of use a prototype in one way or another with the way that they use their pitches and the way that they go after hitters. Is there anyone that you kind of draw any inspiration from, or maybe pieces of a few different guys that you kind of like to look towards?
Yeah, I'm growing up. I mean, being a lefty with a big curveball, I was always watching Kershaw.
Yeah.
He was definitely a guy that I looked at year in and year out and was a big fan of. And um, now I still watching him. It's amazing how far he's come, and um, every start is awesome to watch. And then um, I would say Max Fried as well is the
I'm
guy.
so glad you said that. Was literally going to be I was going to load the question and ask and say, like, I kind of see Max Fried a little bit in the mechanics of whatever, but so what is it about Max Fried besides also the banger curveball?
Yeah, the curveball. I feel like just the way he throws. It's been something. It's crazy because I guess I try and kind of see it because obviously a guy like Max Fried, he's insane. He's been really good the past few years, and I feel like he's only continued getting better. But um, just people have continuously brought up him and me as far as mechanics, pitches look. I remember when he was throwing in the World Series the other year, I got so many people texting me and tweeting at me asking if it was me out there.
Hey, that's a compliment.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And then even I remember my first bullpen in big league spring training. Um, I think Holtzy came up to me and asked if we had Max Fried on the mound. So, it's pretty cool. Obviously he's a really good pitcher, so
Yeah.
it's easy to look at him for sure.
And so is that almost inadvertent? Like, you just happen to have similar mechanics there, because like you said, it sounds like people were kind of telling you about it before you even really realized it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when did I think I first knew who Max Fried was, my junior year of college.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a guy that I had been following growing up.
Yeah.
My high school pitching coach is a big Braves fan, and I remember him in high school saying something about him and comparing me to him, and I was just like, I don't really know who that is. Um, I'm a big Clayton Kershaw guy,
Yeah.
so but then once I saw him and he's in the bigs and doing well, I was like, okay, I can actually kind of see it a little bit.
So mechanically, just to kind of wrap up on that thought, is obviously guys that can pound the strike zone the way you do repeat their mechanics really well, repeat their delivery really well. What allows you to do that? Is it athleticism? Like, were you a two-way player growing up? Like, because I feel like those are the guys sometimes that, played in the field, have that athleticism, have that body control, repeat their delivery well. Or did you kind of just feel like you found the moves that you were able to, just repeat really effectively and continue to repeat the delivery? Because that's something that doesn't come easy for most guys, and especially lefties. It seems like that's something that usually comes a little bit later, but it's always been there for you. What do you attribute that to?
Honestly, I think I'd attribute it to throwing slow when I was younger. Um, I, I wasn't a guy that could blow fastballs by everybody, so I had to throw strikes and I had to fill up the strike zone with all my pitches. So um, having to do that and then mix pitches and throw them off for strikes, just as the velo came, trying it's easy to try and get away from that. But as the velo came, making sure I still contained and worked on the control. It's that I think that's what helped out a lot.
I feel like there's no safer profile in a pitcher than the guy that had to get outs in the, at the lower velocities, maybe a little bit lesser stuff, and then sees this big jump and stuff. It's like, Shane Bieber. I think that's why he's been able to basically survive now the downtick again and stuff, because this is how he got outs before. So
Right.
it is really cool to see that. And I feel like those are the guys that, are pretty can't miss. Last question for you. What's a successful year for Cade Povich in 2023?
Yeah, I think just continuing to build on myself on the field and that consistency level. And then just trying to do stuff away from the field as well. Kind of get out and explore kind of Bowie and Baltimore and whatever area I'm in a little bit more, um, and just grow as a player, as a man, and be the best person I can be.
You just teed me up for one more now. I'm sorry. What are some off the field interests there? That some things you like to do.
Um, I like to explore a lot. I like to go out and walk around and see different areas. That was one thing in college that I did a lot, especially on road trips. Is we'd have night game Friday, so wake up in the morning for breakfast, and then I always felt bad going back to the hotel room and laying in bed
Yeah.
before it starts. So I would go out and walk around the campus or the city or wherever we were, and um, that's kind of where that all stemmed from. And I think it's very relaxing and also
Yes.
kind of starts getting the body going a little bit, especially on start days like that.
Do you have a favorite road trip?
I gotta think. I don't know of any. I would say right now in college. College would be hard too. Probably the regional in Arkansas. That was a good road trip, but
Yeah. No,
um,
I was thinking, because like the Midwest, like there's a lot of interesting spots in a lot of rural areas where you could probably explore quite a bit,
yeah.
especially out where you were. But dude, I really appreciate you taking the time. Again, congratulations on an awesome start to the season, and really excited to see what you're going to do the rest of the way, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.